Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday, presented by Cinematic Visions and another edition of Danny and Tim's Music Scene. And I would say that smiles are a theme for this particular edition. We're going to go all over the map as we usually do, but one thing that music can so much do, and we'll emphasize that during the course of this, is maybe uplift you when you're feeling a little low, or if the music feels a little low, you try to give it an uplift. And there's all kinds of things to consume as far as documentaries and new music and old music that can make you feel good and take you to another place, and that's really what music is all about. And this time around, we will go all over the map, from Cream Magazine to Tim's Facebook page, which is really adrift with all kinds of great and fun stuff there, a lot of it about music, and we'll talk everything from Lady Gaga to the Byrds to Tony Bennett and Ken Burns' series Jazz from 20 years ago, which my wife and I are watching again, and is an absolute treat and a delight. And one of the real smiles that you get from there is from Quentin Marsalis, a delightful storyteller and wonderful person who was deeply involved in some of the narration of that particular piece, and all kinds of other stuff to talk about, too. It's always fun with Tim. We do it every other Wednesday right here on the Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday, presented by Cinematic Visions, and we usually talk about a whole bunch of different things, and we are not letting up on that in this particular edition today. This one's a treat, and I look forward to bringing it to you. Coming up next with me and Tim. It's always fun, and we are coming back at you next.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Visions' goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300. I'm here with Tim Emerson, the owner of Emerson & Company. And Tim, give us an idea of the range of services that you provide from Emerson & Company.
At Emerson & Company, we do credit card processing, payroll services. We do bookkeeping, merchant accounts like point-of-sale systems.
What would you say differentiates you from other companies in the field, and what makes you special?
I think what makes us unique is that we're a small local business making regional decisions on companies. We create a profile for the business and then put it out to our different vendors in a very competitive environment and tailor those needs to the specific business, which usually ends up in a great fit or great result for the company.
And, of course, the idea is to save money, right?
Save money, and actually sometimes I'm surprised where actually a solution that may cost a little bit more ultimately does save money, but we're not conditioned to think like that sometimes.
Emerson & Company. Check them out at emerson-co.com or call them at 816-360-9092.
Right now, it's more important than ever to support local businesses, and 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence is open and ready to take care of you. Make 23rd Street Brewery part of your KU game day experience, whether you watch the game there or grab curbside pickup for your tailgates or watch parties.
But not just game days, 23rd Street Brewery is great any day of the week, and when the weather's nice, you can take advantage of their heaters on the patio. 23rd Street Brewery is open daily from 11:30 to 9 for dine-in, carry-out, curbside pickup, and can even help with your catering needs.
So support local and visit a Lawrence favorite, 23rd Street Brewery.
It's time to visit once again with Dr. Brad Woodle of Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture. And Dr. Brad, your group has reached a significant milestone in receiving a prestigious award.
Danny, we've been honored for the 10th year in a row to receive the 5-Star Service Award from Integrity Doctors. And what this means is that all of our offices throughout Kansas City have made sure to give people excellent chiropractic and acupuncture care, be on time, and do a very complete and thorough job, and have great responses back from patients.
I know firsthand because I was just treated, for instance, today by you. You have a wide range of fantastic services.
Absolutely. Chiropractic, acupuncture, physiotherapies, rehab, anything that you need to keep you well in bones, muscles, joints, and nerves.
And I can't say how much it's benefited me in the time I've coming here, upwards of 2 years. My back has improved 100%. And you can have that same kind of treatment too. For more information and your chance for a healthier way of life, visit asfca.com/Danny today.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
A pleasure to be back with Tim Finn, as always, as each and every other Wednesday, a phrase that I have invented and I wish I never had because I say it and it doesn't make any sense. Every other Wednesday, we get together and talk about music and things that are related to music. And it was a pleasure last Friday on Arts and Kansas City Profiles, presented by Easton Roofing, to bring you a great interview with Billy Brimblecom, who we have from Steps of Faith, who we have talked about multiple times on this particular podcast. And he was a great he's a great storyteller, and if you want to go and revisit that, that's cool. But Billy has a great story, and he's a great person to tell it, right?
Well, he's someone who managed to deal with a pretty traumatic experience in his life and turned it into a lifestyle and a calling, which is he had a leg amputated because of cancer, and he's a drummer. Not a small deal for anyone, but especially for him because, he's been a professional drummer. He went to Nashville and worked in the studio as a session musician. Anyway, he got his prosthetic leg, and then once he started to experience the trouble he had getting one, affording one, having them fit, all that, that became his mission, and he co-founded a foundation, Steps of Faith, and they now raise money to help people who were in the position he was in. Although he had insurance at first, but even then it was a huge chunk of money. So he's helping people who don't even have insurance, have to come up with just tens of thousands of dollars to afford these. And, has testimonies from them about how getting their limb back changed their lives, like more than they imagined. So it's really inspiring. And yeah, he's just one of those kind of walking saints, I call them. They're just out there always doing good and always trying to help other people. So, yeah, I've known Billy for a while, and just one of my favorite people.
Great story. Go back and visit that if you want. Everything is archived at DannyClinkscale.com. And let's talk about some things you've been diving into recently. Everybody's probably familiar with Rolling Stone magazine, but another very influential music magazine that was sort of inspired by Rolling Stone, but maybe sort of took off in another direction, is the subject of a 2019 documentary that you have viewed, Cream Magazine. Very interesting topic, and you say you learned a lot from that.
I did. So, it started in downtown, a very gritty neighborhood in downtown Detroit. And it was, the staff was populated by a lot of native Detroiters. I spent 2 years in Detroit, and the first year felt like 3 years. And the second year felt like 3 months because I really got in tune to the city's vibe. This was in the late 80s. So I have kind of a special place in my heart for Detroit because I grew to figure out how to love the place. But this is going on in the mid to late 60s when it was even grittier. And they just founded this magazine. It was very, very primitive and cut and paste together. And it goes through its evolution into what became a really influential magazine for its sort of, it took a lot of stances that were, a lot of them were immature, a lot of them were really offensive, but they were the anti-Rolling Stone. They called themselves Cream after the band Cream because they said, well, Rolling Stone's named after the Stones, so let's go that direction too, but we'll just change the name. And then they were, they got to be pretty iconoclastic. The very famous music critic Lester Bangs really got his launch there. Dave Marsh, who would go on to Rolling Stone as a really well-known and famous music critic, got his start there. He's from Detroit. And so the movie really dives into what was going on inside the walls of their building, which started, like I said, in downtown Detroit. They eventually moved around a little bit, which would ultimately affect the chemistry of the staff. It was very volatile. There was one part of the staff that wanted the magazine to be more political than it was, because it was a really fiery political time, and others had said, no, we're just music, leave the politics out. So those sides collided every once in a while, and they were pretty sexist. Some of the guys looking back are like, I can't believe I wrote that, I can't believe I said that. But you know what, different time, and it's what our young male readership wanted. So that's what we were supposed to do. That's what we did. And, can't say I'm proud of it right now, but it was successful back then. And that's one reason why. So it really gets into, which I think that was really like the heat and the pinnacle of music journalism. It was really when, the great period of rock and roll was still in its fury. There was a lot to write about. It was intertwined with politics. And they were trying to, Cream was, avoid this, the writers cozying up to the rock stars and writing all these really fawning, positive articles about them, and taking them on and treating them just like ordinary people, and telling them their music sucked if they thought it did. And so it's I knew of the magazine. I didn't read it much, but this really, it just sort of shined light on it, and how influential it was, and how much it meant to a lot of people. Like Michael Stipe was talking about how influential it was for him when he got his hands on his first copy of it, and how as a gay teenager growing up in Georgia, this magazine represented to him what was like a lifestyle that existed out there that he knew he needed to be part of, because he wasn't getting it in Athens, Georgia.
I remember the magazine and seeing it, and I didn't read it much either, and they sort of wore that sloppiness, as it were, on its sleeve. It didn't look as good as Rolling Stone. Rolling Stone was a paper, really, for a long time, but it still had a very good look to it, and Cream was sort of, it kind of looked like it had a little National Enquirer look to it, sort of, kind of, and it seems like they kind of embraced that.
Oh, they did. They wanted to be a little trashy, not a little trashy. And they, but there was some legitimate and genuine criticism going on in its pages, and they were pursuing legitimate stories. But they also wanted to be salacious, and they didn't want to look like Rolling Stone. They were almost like the very first ever zine, which, although a little better produced than those, because they weren't on Xerox or anything like that, but they wanted it to look very sort of like guerrilla journalism, and not super refined and polished and processed like Rolling Stone was, which was, at the time, they ignored Cream because they weren't just about music, they were about other things, politics and social issues and lifestyle. So Rolling Stones just sort of like patted them on the head. It was like, yeah, okay, little brother, you do what you want to do. But Cream had a really fervent and loyal readership, and also a lot of the musicians who were, written about in bad terms and bad light, were really fond of the magazine. And Alice Cooper's on saying, I think the best review we ever got was someone said our first album was a waste of plastic. And he goes, yeah, it's like, perfect. Who doesn't want a review like that? Their irreverence was part of their charm.
You also are consuming in small doses a new Netflix series called Pretend It's a City, which was lampooned on Saturday Night Live last Saturday night, if anybody has seen that. Martin Scorsese directed it. He's in it. Fran Lebowitz is a person who is sort of a driving force behind it as well. She's kind of a crusty maiden, as it were, and I have not seen it, but we certainly have Netflix, and it sounds like something worth exploring. Once you get lampooned, I think that you kind of made it, right?
Right. Well, I think what they were lampooning more than anything was Martin Scorsese. If you can imagine how Ed McMahon used to laugh at Johnny Carson's jokes, it's that times 50. He's just laughing uproariously and boisterously, and on SNL, they were doing a bit during a Weekend Update. He's like falling off the chair. We were watching that, and my wife, who had not yet seen part of Pretend It's a City, was like, what's this all about? And I said, I'll show you in a little bit. So then after we watched SNL, we watched an episode of the Pretend It's a Cities, and she's like, they weren't really exaggerating. Like, he really does go overboard laughing at stuff that's probably wasn't really intended to be funny. She's just kind of funny, no matter what she's saying, because she's very observational and critical, and so she's kind of like another version of Larry David. That's what I get out of her. Always a little bit miserable, and just wishes fewer people were around her in her life. But so episode 2, like, these are in 26, 28, 29 minute lengths, and they include footage, like some amazing footage, archival footage. So see, episode 2 is really kind of focused on music. She had this very close relationship. She's gay, so it wasn't that kind of relationship. It was a friendship with Charles Mingus. And I think through a friend, they had mutual friends. So the great legendary jazz bassist. And so she has a story about him that includes him chasing her down the streets of New York. I won't ruin it for anybody, but it's like outrageous. And there's footage of him that has nothing to do with her, but that they just found an old footage of him with Duke Ellington, who was his mentor. And then there's later in the show footage of Duke Ellington with Leonard Bernstein talking. It's just incredible footage of these men, these giants in music, at the peak of their artistry. And it's really stunning. But also in the show, she starts talking about seeing footage of live music and concerts. And she says, what really fascinates me is shots of the audience and how happy people are to be in that setting. And how when you hear the music of your youth, what it does to you is kind of magical. It preys on your emotions and your memories, and it like nothing else in this world does. And she said that's why musicians are so beloved, because I think she says music is the one thing that makes you happy that isn't bad for you. And how she says, the music of my teenage years was Motown, and every time I hear Motown, I'm happier, and I know I'm going to be happier. There's nothing else in life like that. So kind of out of nowhere, she gave this really breathtaking soliloquy on the power, the enchantment of live music. And I'm thinking, that's why everyone's so sad right now, because we can't be in those places and seeing those people. But she said musicians and chefs bring more pleasure to the human beings than anyone on the planet. So I couldn't really argue with that.
No, not indeed. And that's a good segue to something we're revisiting, my wife and I, and that is the Ken Burns series, Jazz. They're rolling that out on PBS right now in segments. And, of course, you can, I'm sure, access it wherever you get those series. Didn't realize my wife was looking at her phone while we were watching one of the episodes and realized it was 20 years ago that it was done. I didn't realize it was that long ago. Maybe that's why they're doing it. But what I said this, and and my wife said, well, maybe that's because it's sort of about a happy thing. To me, it's the most well done and maybe his best documentary. We watched episode 2, and then last night we watched episode 4. And one thing I was struck by was in episode 2, they really focused on Louis Armstrong and what his impact was on American music. And it was really good for me to watch this because I was young when Louis Armstrong had become a little bit of a caricature of himself, when he would do the talk show circuit and things like that. And this focused on his, young virtuosity and incredible talent. And that is something that I think everybody should see who grew up maybe as my age or a little younger, who just thinks of, Louis Armstrong as that guy who was sweating up on stage singing funny songs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'll need to go back and revisit that because I didn't watch all of that, the jazz.
It's fantastic.
Right. But I have been watching Birth of the Cool, the Miles Davis documentary, which I think is on Netflix. And it's a couple hours, but that was just more insight into his immeasurable genius and like how it came out of nowhere and how it influenced his peers who were, Coltrane and guys like that, like huge jazz legends who, when Miles Davis came along, even they turned their heads and said, wait, what is that? Where's that coming from? So it's really stunning how that period, those, the jazz giants are among the greatest in our music history. And not only were they producing, the music of a lifetime, but as pointed out in the Miles Davis documentary, in the face of intense racism, Jim Crow, in the South, and all that other stuff, garbage they had to put up with, nonetheless, they were pursuing what they loved and feeding their genius. And it's really amazing that they were able to create what they did, testimony to their spirit, their artistic spirit, but also their just their fortitude and their willingness to put up with a bunch of garbage in order to pursue what they love the most.
One thing I'll say to folks out there, you really got to, if you have any interest in music, you got to watch this, even if you find there's one or two episodes or whatever. But the sort of the Buck O'Neill of this piece really is Wynton Marsalis, who, when he comes on the screen, he just lights up the screen, and he's got this delightful personality. And one of the things he does is he sort of scats and covers the music part of it by saying, well, he was just doing this doodly doodly doodly. I mean, it's absolutely infectious, and that guy's face will just put us. When you talk about making somebody happy, I mean, that dude is just a walking smile. I mean, unbelievable.
I saw him at the Midland. He brought his Christmas orchestra, so it was a Christmas before last, I think. He was the MC, but he was standing in the back. He was not commandeering the show, but he was getting it, walking it through its progressions. And yes, really enchanting and just a really dynamic but congenial speaker. He's very kind of avuncular, and he was really super charming and also humble. I guess that's what I got out of watching him then, was he was sort of conceding and bowing to all the great musicians around him as if he were just one of them,
Right. And he is it's a delightful thing. So there's three really interesting things for you to perhaps sample and entertain. And entertaining is what several things are we have coming up. And I'll surprise Tim with one or two things and get a reaction or two, as we are always very diverse, always very eclectic, and always very enjoyable here on Danny and Tim's Music Scene as part of our Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday presented by Cinematic Visions.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
It's time now to get some great assistance on healthcare with Chad Beisel from NoNonsenseHealthcareNinja.com. And Chad, even your business's name would indicate that you have a real aggressive way and an important way to go after some health insurance for your clients.
What I've found out in the industry is just a lot of people are really confused. They don't know what plans are good, what their plans offer, how they cover. And so I've just taken the approach of being really educated on what options are available to clients and showing them all the options that are available and making sure they understand them so they can pick and choose what options are good for them.
And one thing that's really important, of course, is access to doctors and hospitals.
Absolutely. That's becoming a big issue for a lot of people. Some of the plans out there are going to restrict those clients to where they can and cannot go. So if you live just outside the Kansas City metro, some of the counties outside, you may not be able to go to some of the hospitals up here in the Kansas City area. So making sure that you have a plan that's got doctors and hospitals and places you want to go is really, really important today.
Learn more by visiting NoNonsenseHealthcareNinja.com and let Chad help you. I'm here with David Schmidt from Private Capital. And David, tell us more about your outstanding firm.
Thanks, Danny. Here at Private Capital, we focus on return on asset. In today's world, it is survival of the fittest. We look at things from all angles and try to figure out what works best for you. The changes we will see this next year on assets will be monumental. The key to success is knowledge. Know where you want to go, and we'll be here along the way. To find out more, give us a call at 816-221-7775.
David Schmidt from Private Capital with the best service for you. Firsthand, I have enjoyed the benefits of the CBD products from Canaway. My back feels better and better these days, as a major part of my routine are the pain-relieving salve and the Pure Gold oil. And recently, I had the pleasure of a treatment session using the Canaway CBD in conjunction with the Microlight 830 cold laser. The non-invasive treatment session worked wonders, and I could barely tell I was even being touched. TML830 is the first 3B cold laser to get FDA approval, and in addition, the combination treatment with CBD is patent pending. The new smart laser is the only hands-free cold laser in the world and is used by athletic trainers, chiropractors, MDs, physical therapists, and veterinarians everywhere. You can learn more about all the great benefits from the complete line of Canaway CBD products by contacting my friend Sherry McCants at 515-208-6312. That's 515-208-6312 to get outstanding information about Canaway. I'm here with Joe Spiker, owner of Easton Roofing, and boy, we had to negotiate a million things in 2020, but Easton Roofing navigated them all. As 2021 rolls out, what should we expect this coming storm season?
Well, Danny, it'll be the same thing as it is every year. The storms come, and you've got the guys out knocking on doors offering quote-unquote free inspections. Be wary as a homeowner. If somebody's knocking on your door, they probably need the work, and if they need the work that bad, they may be willing to do something untoward to get it. So if somebody knocks on your door, says they want to give you a free inspection, just tell them have a great day and give us a call. We'll come out for free and give you a good, honest opinion as to whether or not you need to do anything at all with your roof.
And what's the best way to get in touch with Easton Roofing?
You can always find us online at eastonroofing.com or give us a call at 913-257-5426.
Easton Roofing. Integrity matters. If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at Danny@DannyKlinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. We're back with Tim. Smiles on our faces. Music does that for you if you're feeling low and feeling challenged by these times, which aren't getting particularly better yet. Revisit some music, revisit some music stories, revisit some documentaries. It really will put a smile on your face. And maybe for the first time, visit Tim Finn's Facebook page. It is an endless delight to go on your Facebook page. And the stuff you put on there is just wonderful. I mean, sometimes it can be, maybe a little controversial to some people, but a lot of times it's just old photographs. And you had a photograph of that I just saw the other day, which is what you called a picture of a hot shit quartet with Carl Wayne, John Mayall, Stevie Winwood, Jimi Hendrix, and Eric Burdon. By the way, Eric Burdon's guitarist passed away the other day. We can touch on that a little bit. I saw that, yeah. But I mean, that picture has so much history and so much cool in it, and it's just an example of a lot of things you like to visit on your Facebook page. It's fun for us, but it seems like it must be a blast for you.
Yeah, because I belong to several groups. That's where I find those stuff like that. It's I don't even remember where it came from. I also posted a photograph of was it Joan Jett, Deborah Harry, David Johansen, and who was the other guy? Ramon. Yeah, one of the Ramones. All together, like, what is this? When did this happen? Why were all these four people in the same room, much less posing for a picture? So, yeah, I love stuff like that. Part of it is just, being kind of a get off my lawn, like that's back when music was really great. Sorry, but also, yeah, I love that, finding out these really weird meetings of great minds happened, and I don't really know the story behind that Hendrix picture because there wasn't posted with an explanation. But I'll dig through it sometime this week and see if I can figure out why those five were together, whether any music came out of it. Because it couldn't have been too long before Hendrix died. I don't know, just based on how he looked.
Right, and he didn't live that long, so it almost had to be. But I mentioned Hilton Valentine, who was the guitarist with the iconic riff of House of the Rising Sun, which, when I was growing up, was played by every bad kid guitarist at every little function that you had. So it played poorly. It still is easy to play, but the way he played it and that song came, I don't think it's nearly one of their best songs, but it's a good song. And by the Animals and Eric Burdon, who we mentioned earlier, but certainly probably one of the most famous guitar riffs ever.
Yeah, I remember the summer or whatever, right around the time it came out, I had an older cousin who was learning to play guitar. We were all staying together in this camp up in northern Vermont, and him learning that and playing it endlessly and finally getting it, but just like, oh God, not again. I'm gonna go down to the lake now.
Right.
But yeah, it was a popular song, and yeah, any young guitar players are going to try to figure that out because it was not too simple, but it was easy enough to get.
Yeah, absolutely. So he passed away last Friday, as a matter of fact, at the age of 77, and then recently had returned to his roots with a skiffle band and was touring the United States, as a matter of fact. Mm-hmm. So another thing, I thought of you instantly when I heard this particular quote. We were watching another one of those rock legends that we visit with all the time that are played on MTV, whatever that channel's called now, and run out there. I always have it. I have to keep deleting them because they automatically pop up in my DVR, and so I go there and there's 14 of them. But we watched the one on the Byrds last night, and this one,
oh, nice.
And one of the pundits said this. It was the guy with the gray hair. Just for people who watch it, they'll know he's the best pundit, I think, on there. They're all pretty good, but as we've talked about before, it's a very short, tightly edited, but really chock full of information look at bands and artists. And he said, the Byrds effectively created folk rock, country rock, and psychedelic rock. Is that wildly overstated or somewhat accurate?
I guess, I mean, you could make kind of a loose case for that. I think there was country rock before Sweetheart of the Rodeo, definitely. So I think they brought it into the mainstream. Right. You could argue that.
There you go.
But they didn't, I can't say they invented any of that. Invented it, out of nowhere. Like there was some of that before them.
Right.
It wasn't like New Rockby before it passed. There was a little bit, and then they gave it their flavor and their panache, and they became popular, and those sounds became popular. They're one of my favorite bands ever. I love them.
I do too.
Pretty much everything they've done.
Yeah, everything they did was great. And by the way, don't visit any of Roger McGuinn's most recent CDs or whatever. They're not very good, but he's rather a delightful spokesperson these days.
Yeah.
I like listening to him talk. But anyway, that was. Go ahead.
That was also the band where David Crosby just started down the path of being band member everyone's going to eventually hate, I guess.
Right. And he's
resent.
And he's been the subject of a documentary about himself, and then he was in one of the Laurel Canyon documentaries. There's been 2 Laurel Canyon documentaries in the last few years, and they're both good. So I can definitely recommend that. And for whatever reason, my wife, when she just loves young David Crosby, he can't come on the screen and her not just start swooning, which seems a little weird when he eventually becomes a bald, fat man with a funny mustache. So
yeah, they were a good-looking band, when they were just part of a documentary I watched, and I can't remember it right now because I've been piling them on. But it was going back to what we were talking about in that whole era of rock and roll back in the late 60s and early 70s. There was just so much influential music coming out on top of each other that you didn't really have time to take stock in how great it was or how influential it would be. But I mean, it's a real boomer thing to say that was the greatest moment. And there are plenty of great moments since, and there will be more, but just so much happened then because it was kind of ground zero. Nothing really, a lot hadn't been done. There were still a lot of places to fill in and spaces to fill, and they took advantage of most of them, I think. Now everything kind of goes back to that.
Absolutely. And I think we'll close on this. It's not yet sort of a really sad story, but Tony Bennett's family has revealed that he has been suffering from Alzheimer's since for the last 4 years or so. It comes in conjunction with the fact that he's about to release a new set of duets with Lady Gaga, and I saw a special with them when they did the first set of duets, and it's just remarkable. He still is actually cognitive, able to perform and things like that, but they wanted to announce it because certainly he is having his challenges, and that, you know, people, if he's had a little slippage, people should know why that is particularly happening. Tony Bennett has always been a particular favorite of mine. You know, there's always this sort of ongoing conversation about Tony Bennett versus Frank Sinatra. I think Tony Bennett has so much admiration for Frank Sinatra, I probably shouldn't even do that, but I've always loved Tony Bennett, maybe because he seemed like a nicer man. But he's still singing. He's 94 years old. He's still doing remarkable things, to this day. And that stuff with Lady Gaga is pretty nice.
Yeah, we saw that on the Grammys one year, I think, because they were nominated for a Grammy and may have won it, because this is going back a while.
Yep.
I interviewed him once, so I'm thinking he was 83, so that was probably 11 or so years ago.
Right.
I think he was coming here. He must have been, or I don't know why I would have had the chance to,
right.
But yeah, he was just an absolute, uncommonly kind, you know, generous prince of a man. I just like, you don't have to be this nice to me. You know how great you are? It's kind of what I was feeling. And, but he was. And, yeah, I mean, my mother loved him. It was kind of like the Beatles and the Stones. There was Tony Bennett, and then there was Frank Sinatra. And, so there was a lot of Tony Bennett in our house, and when he was on, we watched it, and my mother just loved him and his voice. And yeah, he was one of the greatest singers ever, for sure.
No question about that. That's a good way to close, and many more smiles to Tony Bennett as he lives out the last couple of years of his life and still performing great music. Well, we're all over the map as usual, Tim, but we've provided some smiles and suggestions. That's what we're all about, and look forward to talking to you 2 weeks hence.
Okay, sounds good, Danny. Thanks.
We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Klingscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new. This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like
NoNonsenseHealthcareNinja.com, specializing in expert healthcare guidance and assistance for you.